Let's get talking about plazas. Hello and welcome back to Tricolor Gaming with me, Fletcher. So this is just Fletcher delivering a quick message before the video starts. Unfortunately, NVIDIA ants will rather buggered up the recording of the audio for the following video, so the quality is quite poor. I've done what I can to try to save it, but just bear with the video. I do apologise, and it will be fixed for the next video. So thank you for watching, and just bear with that terrible audio quality, please. And welcome back to my walkthrough park on Arizona. If you haven't seen part 1 of this series, I suggest you go back and give that a watch now, as we start with part 2. And today we're going to get started with building the first of the main guest areas. We're going to go through decorating it, what you can do to make it look to stand out, and we're also going to look at the amenity buildings and what you can do to improve those. So let's get started straight away. Now, you can see this is the nice little entranceway that we had constructed last time. And what we're going to do is construct an entrance plaza here. Now, I want to make sure that this entrance plaza is fairly large. About 2 maximum path lengths in height. There we go. And I want to put something in the middle of this plaza to function as a bit of a focal point. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do this. Sometimes something as simple as just putting something in the dead center. So there's our central line, and we're going to just actually no, what we're going to do is go up from the central line, go up by 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to go down by 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to join them up like so. So there's our central O-ring there. So now we have our central ring in the middle. What we're going to do is come up with a nice focal point. Now, something I quite like to do is to use the lagoons. You can use the lagoons to create a little water feature at the center of any plaza you create. Obviously, it's very difficult to see the water, but from above it looks very good. Something else you could do is simply do some nice path art here, or have a small exhibit here. But what I'm going to do is try to use the aviary pieces and a few mods to create a raised veranda or gazebo. What we're going to start off by doing is first of all put in our aviary, and then switching to mods, I'm going to raise the aviary up just a bit, maybe a bit more. And hopefully that is still in the center line. Difficult to tell. That's the center line there. What we're going to do is just raise it up. Keep raising it up to about there. Yeah, that's fine. So there is our raised gazebo-like structure. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the path can get to it. Now I'm going to switch to push path for this particular section and make sure it is connected to the outside plaza. I'm going to create a surrounding ring or path. There we go. Not quite like that, because that didn't look right. Let's try that again. That looks better. There we go. And And then in the middle, we're going to make use of this space for seating. Actually, no, what we're going to do is we're going to create another ring inside of this plaza. But we will be able to put rocks and vegetation in there, so we can do something with that. Next part is to make sure that this aviary gallery doesn't look like it's gonna fall onto people. So I'm actually going to thicken up this path here by a couple of pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one there and one there, and then connect one there and one to there. That is the basis for our gazebo sort of affair. Looks alright from a distance, I think. So, next up, I want to create a ring of path around the legs of this gazebo. I'm going to create them in dark. Good. There we go. Excellent. So this central, the area around the pillars, we will just use for decoration or whatever. This outer line of path marks the edge, basically, of that central section. Now, we could put shops and amenities on the outside of the plaza. I am going to try and put them on the inside, because I think we have the space to do it. Why is that trying to raise it above ground level? That's very strange. Isn't that peculiar? It snaps to the... Okay, we are going to have to put them around the outside. If we are going to have to put them around the outside, I think we'll go for slightly bigger ones. Actually, I might put two down here to start with. Let's do that to begin with. Let's delete a couple of sections of this path, fence even, and let's put the first of our amenities down here. So there's one. And before we even move from having created that first amenity, we're going to set it up. And what I mean by that is we're going to decide what our colour scheme is going to be, and basically what we're going to want them to look like. Now, I quite like these panel buildings, the Jurassic World panels. It gives you a lot more variation in terms of colour, just because there's more colour on it. We won't go with the skulls feature, we'll go with something with a bit more vegetation in mind, I think. Rock planters, lights and planters, that's okay. Right, so in colours, I'm going to go with a white and green colour scheme. I'm going to make the roofs white as well. We're going to make any decorations we have black. And we're going to make the lighting a warm orange. There we go. And then once you have set up your first amenity in terms of colour patterning, always save as default. That will make every other amenity structure you create always have the same colour combination. So in goes the second one. You can see all we need to do is set up with the panels. We'll keep with the wooden stairs, we'll go with the panels entrance, we'll match it on the other side, keep the seating with plants. We'll go with the same light and stick with the juice. So there we go. So tip 1 for amenities is to always make sure you have the colour scheme set before you build more than one. That way every other that you create will be perfect and fixed. Tip number 2 for amenities is that I would always advise trying to increase the space between them. So don't just have a row of amenities like 1, 2, 3. Try to have some space between and try to make use of the corner cutouts to increase that space. You can see here that it's a lot more open if you put it on the corner than if you were to put it on the side, for example. Now, with those two in place, I'm going to construct a brief bit of path going behind the small amenity, matching it there. That's better, I think. Yes, it is. Perfect. There we go. Almost looks like it should be there. And again, we'll just quickly set up what I want this to look like. So there's the panels, concrete with parapet. This needs to be actually we want this one to actually be like a shopping, guest shopping. There we go. And we'll just switch this to, I think, medium panel, and then we'll put the entrance on the corner. We'll keep the metallic columns, put some trees in, keep the sign as it is, and again, putting it on the corner just helps to alleviate space. Obviously, if I had expanded maps on, this border wouldn't be a problem, but there we go. We'll just use the one and try to make it look exactly symmetrical to the other side. There we are. And we can always fill in some of this space. There we go. We can fill in some of that space with decorations if we really must. So there is the first section of Plaza. Shops in place. Now I think what we'll do is create some nice path art around the outside. So we'll put in 2 middle sections here. And now you can see we've got sort of 4 quadrants which we can design. Snap that to there. Snap that to there. So there's our surrounding path. And in terms of patterns for path art, you can really do what you like. Stripes, circles, they all work well. Just remember, the more complex the pattern, the harder it is to replicate. What we're going to go with this one is we're going to go with some simple circles, and we're going to put at the centre of each circle a large tree. Let it snap. There you have the perfect circles. We're going to line them with the lighter colour of path, because the lighter colour makes the colours pop, as you can see. So all I'm going to do is create a slightly thicker section down at the base. There we go. And something reasonably easy to copy on this side. 1, 2, 3. Let me just copy this across. Doing path art, it takes time and a lot of patience, but it can really help improve your plazas and your parks. There we go. So we now have the surrounding path, and this, the rest of this area, we're just going to leave, and we're going to use for vegetation and decoration. So what we're going to do is paint it all in a lighter colour. That way it stands out from the rest of the dirt of the park. And it's also useful if you want to sort of put in a garden or something, but you're kind of still constructing the rest of the park. It's helpful just to have sort of a marker to denote where you're going to put the vegetation or the garden or whatever you're going to do. So first thing I want to do is put a decent sized, actually no, before we do the decoration, let's improve these pillars. There we go, just to sort of make that look a little bit stronger, I suppose. Okay, so, trees. I think that the base game has some very poor choices of tree when it comes to the desert maps. So we're going to use Kydenic's mod to put in some different types of tree. Elm trees and oak trees are a bit too European. Beech trees, K-pox I think are wonderfully. I think they have quite an African feel to them. So we're going to put some K-pox in each of these corners, just remembering to rotate each time so they don't look all the same direction. Inside here, let's create a little rockery by making use of the rocks. There we go. And then we're going to use the standard brushes to paint in vegetation here, because we don't need to mess around placing vegetation manually every time. And then around the rest of this, we're going to put in cacti and bushes. Trying to anyway. We may have to manually place down a few, but that's fine. Yes, I think we are going to have to manually place down because these just haven't worked in here as well as I would have hoped. And that's the real advantage that using mods provides. If something doesn't look quite according, to muster, if something doesn't look good, you can easily change it. Now, I kind of want there to be something beneath this tree here. I'm not going to let me either. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll manually place down a few rocks in here and use those rocks as vegetation points. And what I mean by vegetation points is that you stick the vegetation around those rocks. So, switching back to Kydenic's mod and switching to his palms, we want the grouped palms. We're just going to stick palms around those vegetation points. Now obviously this is easy because I've got the free build mod on, so I don't have to mess around with positioning stuff. If you're not using free build, this is probably going to be a bit more tricky, but again, you should be able to place the basic trees and such close enough to get a similar effect. Remember also to always vary the height of your surrounding trees and foliage, because trees and foliage are not always the same height if they're not planted at the same time. Vary the type of tree and foliage as well. For the same reason. There you go, that's already looking better. Now the other thing we have to do is ensure that these look bedded in. So we're going to switch to the low bushes and just put a few in. The alpine shrubs is quite useful for this. Taiga meadow, featherheads, shrubs. Yep. just these low dry shrubs, just to bed it in. Obviously you could use bushes of other types or just the standard foliage brushes for this. There we go. So we'll switch to the flowers, just put a few in there. I might stick a few inside of the other locations too. Obviously this is again using mods, but some of these strategies you can easily perform on non-modded games. The main thing to remember when you're making something like plazas is to always remember to have a focal point. Have something in there that's going to drive your guests towards it, whether it's decoration or a fountain or a seating area. Just have something to make it look distinctive from the other areas of your park. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks okay from the front. And I think what I'm going to do for some added vavavu is just hide the tops of these structures by putting some lighting poles in. Those lovely obelisks. And if I can rotate each one slightly. Like so. I'm going to put those in. Oh, this one needs to be lowered slightly. I'm going to put those in just to hide the lighting poles. And we should get quite a nice effect. I'll be back in a few moments while I finish doing these to the rest of the building.
A few moments later.
And there we go. So, while you were away, I just tidied things up a bit. What actually happened was I accidentally deleted the central dome, so I had to place it back in. And what I've done is I've actually put it at a slightly lower height. That way it doesn't look so strange with the concrete fencing running around it. The light poles look a bit more distinctive. I went around with the Kydex Move It mod just to move them all into a similar position so they look neat and tidy. And I've covered their quite obvious positions with some of the fire obelisks. You can get that out there. The fire obelisks are just to provide a bit more of a visual interest. Inside we've got, I've created this nice little round garden in the centre. We've got some fountains, we've got some seating areas, and what I've done is I've put a floodlight in here. So in the darkness, this is what it looks like. And we can see inside here just how well that floodlight works on illuminating this central gazebo sort of veranda sort of affair that we've built. We can also see here how that warm orange lighting works with our guest structures. Going back to those guest structures, I also did a little bit of messing around, and what I've done is I've changed a few of them around. So I've created my own downstairs area for this one with fountains and seating. And with the one over here, I've just improved their boring or flower displays with a couple of pterosaur statues. And a chunk of the round amber statue here, just to, again, give a nice bit of decoration to the guest building. Now that's the plaza basically ready to go, and in the next part we'll probably think about how to expand from here, how to make use of this space over here, and where the first exhibits are going to go. But before we build and put in our exhibits, we need to think about where we're going to breed the exhibits. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my dinosaur production facility in this little cutout here. Now if this map mounted in the map here was part of the map and isn't what I wanted to have as my distinctive landscape. I would probably put my dinosaur production facility on here. I would just dig it out. But what I'm going to do instead is create an artificial sort of waterfall-like area. So the first step is I'm going to remove some of this water, and we're going to increase the height of this dinosaur production facility. There are a few key buildings you want to make use of. The first is one of the other arrival point types. Doesn't matter which, but I always tend to use the DFW one. Now, even though this is a sort of staff area for the park, you still want it to look reasonably nice. So stick to doing all the things you would do with guest buildings in your staff area, essentially. I'm going to use the the biosin hatchery, just because I like the way it looks, with this wonderful rounded construction. I'm going to create a perimeter path there. Now obviously if you want to test skins, you could build a small sort of containment facility here, just fence it in, and you could deploy dinosaurs out and check that the skins look alright. But I have the skin database already that I created, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to put in here instead is the other hatchery types we're probably going to want to use. And again, this is obviously Kyodenics mod that's allowing me to phase the buildings into one another. If you are using Kyodenics mod, something I would say is to try to, when you are phasing buildings into each other, try to make it look like they belong. Sometimes I've seen it look really quite obvious where buildings have been sort of splodged together, and it just looks very bizarre. So try to always make it look correct. I'm going to stick one of the lagoon hatcheries in here. There we go. And I'm going to fill the surrounding space up with some ginkgo, because ginkgo will produce bigger trees, and it does suit the desert environment, I think. You may have to wait for it to actually produce them. Don't put tall trees near your aircraft. Almost broke my own rules there. That's slightly frustrating. Leveled it to the wrong height. That's something we probably should have done before we started building, is to level it to water height, but that's fine. We can cope with that. What I'm actually going to do, instead of putting it straight in, what we'll do is we'll create a bit of a rocky ridge between those structures and the water source. And as long as it sort of connects to this one here, that's fine. And then what we can do is actually construct more of a rocky ridge on this side. We have a water source leading to this river, and that, as we did last time, in some greenery, especially around the water source. Always remember to stick a few different types of tree in your greenery. To be fair, we can just leave that as it is and make it look like the waterfall has dried up. So, and obviously now we have all the important staff buildings going on here. And if you wanted to make this more of an actual dedicated staff area, you could have these staff centre buildings and everything else here. But this is obviously mostly just a temporary sort of construction, just enough to hide really what it's for and to make it look a little less obvious on the map. I might go back to that and redesign this area off screen, I don't know yet. So there we go, so we've got our entrance plaza, we have our dinosaur production facility. So let's recap a few tips and tricks. Number 1, when it comes to building amenities, build one amenity first and make sure you edit the color selection once you have built that first amenity. Always click the Save as Default button so that every single amenity structure will have the same color scheme. Tip number 2, when placing amenities, think about spacing. Add path between amenities to space them out. Position the entrances on the corner pieces to increase the space, to make it look less cramped. Tip number 3, when you're building large plazas, especially at the entrance, have a focal point in the middle. This could be anything from a particular decoration, a large garden, or a lagoon, for example. Decide what you want to have in the middle. I mean, you could even have something like this aviary dome, but have it at normal ground level and just have trees growing inside of it, just as like a mock greenhouse. It doesn't have to be as ornate and elaborate as this or using mods. Tip number 4, use different colors of path to differentiate particular areas and to make your colors of path pop. For example, use the light colored path around the dark color in order to make it look a bit more distinctive. Tip number 5, when building your dinosaur production facility, try to build it somewhere out of the way and try to use either natural terrain or artificial terrain to hide your dinosaur production area to make it look less obvious. And finally, tip number 6, and this is back to the entrance plazas, use your imagination and make them large. The larger your plaza, the more decoration you can do with it, the more decorative you can make the path art within and the patterns within. And there we have it. There's our wonderful veranda / sort of covered gazebo area for our guests, all ready, complete to go. Now in the next part, we're going to move away from doing decorative areas for the guests, and we're going to think about what to do with the rest of the park. In the next part, we'll discuss what animals to have at the start of your park, how to build nice looking enclosures, and we'll discuss the idea of what particular skins are best to use and when. But until next time, I want to thank you all for watching. Don't forget, if you haven't seen part 1 of this walkthrough series, I suggest you go back and do so. And I will see all of you in part 3. Until then, stay safe and goodbye.